Shalom, this is Yair Davidiy from Brit-Am Hebrew tribes. We are continuing our description of the names of the tribes, how the tribes received the names at their birth, and how that the names given to the tribes when they were born. Remember, there were 12 Israelite tribes, sons of Jacob, who were named Israel. 12 tribes. Each one was born. The Bible in Genesis, book of Genesis, describes how they were born and tells us what names they were given when they were born. And these names also tell us something about the character of the tribes themselves and the peoples who came out of them. And we already discussed the 4 tribes of Reuben, of Simeon, of Levi, of Judah. Now we're going on to discuss more tribes. We saw there were 12 tribes descended from Jacob, who was renamed Yisrael. See Genesis 32:28, also 35:10. We saw how Jacob, that is Israel, had married Rachel and Leah, who were sisters. Rachel and Leah were full sisters. The father of Rachel and Leah was Laban from Aram. Rachel had a handmaiden named Bilhah, and Leah had a handmaiden named Zilpah. According to the sages, both Bilhah and Zilpah were also sisters to Rachel and Leah, but they were from concubines, but they were all from the same father. Whatever the case, this is the situation. We had Leah and Rachel as the 2 main tribes, and Bilhah and Zilpah as the handmaidens of Rachel and Leah. So altogether, Jacob had children from all 4 women. From Rachel, Jacob was to beget Joseph and Benjamin. From Bilhah, the handmaiden of Rachel, he begat Dan and Naphtali. From Zilpah came Gad and Asher. Zilpah was the handmaiden of Leah. From Leah, Jacob begat Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. After Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, there came Dan and Naphtali. In Genesis 30, verses 4-5, then she, that is Rachel, gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, as wife. Rachel gave to Jacob, her husband, the Bilhah. Bilhah was a handmaiden, and she gave Bilhah to Jacob. Jacob went into Bilhah. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Dan means judge, judgment. Dan is a judge. And Dan has this quality of being a judge, of deciding things, black and white, yes or no. Dan makes decisions like a judge does. We find descendants of Dan amongst the Irish and also amongst the people of Denmark. And I heard from a reliable source that in many areas in the USA, a good portion of the lawyers are descended from Irishmen. The lawyers are descended from Irishmen, and so too many of the judges. Also in Scandinavia, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, many of the judges are said to be from Denmark. So this indicates this attribute of being a judge is found amongst these peoples. We also have other proofs, numerous proofs, confirming that these peoples are descended from Dan. This is not the only proof. This is not the only point of evidence we bring, but it is one of them. It is incidental, but interesting, valuable, worth knowing. So we have Dan. Dan came from Bilhah. Also after Dan came Naphtali. It says in Genesis 30, verse 7, onwards to verse 8, and Rachel's maid Bilhah, that is Bilhah, conceived again and bore Jacob a 2nd son. And then Rachel said, with great wrestlings I wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed, so she called his name Naphtali. Naphtali in Hebrew means wrestle, means struggle, it means intertwine. And so we have this attribute of wrestling. Also, Naphtali is compared to a female deer. See Genesis 49:21. The sages says that the female deer is faster than the male deer. That is why the female deer was the symbol of Naphtali, and why Naphtali is likened to a female deer, and there are other reasons. But we have this idea of speed, of wrestling, of combativeness. We have this attribute of athletic proclivities, we find a good portion of people from Naphtali in Norway. We also find them in England and in Ireland. So notice that we are attributing several different tribes to the same areas, because in certain areas the tribes intermixed. And within these areas there were regions of their own. So we can even become specific. When we have more details, the specifics exist. At all events, Naphtali had this attribute of combativeness, of athletics, of strength, of speed, and from Naphtali and Dan, that is from Norwegians and Danes, came the Vikings. And the Vikings were strong people, combative people, or warrior people, and there were also people whose tactics and attributes entailed acting in a quick and determined manner when they came on raids against the English and against the French and against the Irish people and settled in their areas. So this is consistent with the name Naphtali, meaning wrestling, and also the name of Dan, meaning Dan, taking vengeance, attributing determined deeds, black and white actions, to the peoples in question. Thank you. May the Lord God of Israel bless you.